But today, the Constitutional Court dismissed an appeal by public sector wage unions finding their 2018 collective bargaining agreement to be unenforceable. The unions, including SADTU and NEHAU, wanted government to be ordered to pay workers a 2020 wage increase in terms of a collective bargaining agreement agreed upon back in 2018. Now, the Apex Court found that the agreement was invalid and unlawful. For more reaction on this, we're joined now by Public Service and Administration Minister Ayanda Dlodlo. Minister, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. So, of course, this ruling is in favor of government ultimately regarding this deal. The court went as far as saying it's unenforceable. Let's talk about the anger and outrage, though, from unions and how you're going to deal with future negotiations around salaries.
I think the issue of unenforceability really is not so much about its legality, because we had gone through an extensive process of consultation, both at the Committee of Ministers, which we call the Mandate Committee, and also with Cabinet. But what has come up over time is the affordability of the agreement. And as you would know that for some time now, we have not been performing extremely well in terms of our economy. SARS capacity to meet its obligation in terms of collecting were a little below what SARS had envisaged they would be able to collect. So there's a whole plethora of issues that made the enforcement a lot more difficult because of the affordability. But insofar as the bargaining processes, the bargaining council processes, we haven't had a chat as yet, and I will emphasize as yet, with Labour. I still need to meet with my counterparts in the Committee of Ministers, in the Mandate Committee. I've had a chat this morning with the Minister of Finance, and we all agree that we really need to engage one another so that we avoid any fallouts that might ensue from this process, because as Labour and the employer, we all need one another in terms of ensuring that the work of government continues, we deliver quality services to our people, and also the fact that respect for the bargaining council and its processes should remain intact.
Well, you see, the problem is that it might be too late for that, because unions are already commenting on the ruling today, and they say that this ultimately means they can't trust government when it comes to negotiating in good faith.
Again, trust is earned, and if they say today they do not trust us, if Labour does not trust us today, it really doesn't mean that the horse is bolted and we cannot repair the relationship between the employer and the employee. And as you would know, that we have tried our very best as government to ensure that some work is done to compensate employees for the losses that they would have experienced with the lifting of clause 3.3 of the agreement of 2018. So the horse is not necessarily bolted. We just received the judgment today. We have not engaged both at the government level because we're still studying the judgment. I haven't even gone through it as yet, but I did go through the media summary that was issued by the Constitutional Court. So I always move from a premise of positivity that our relationship will be enhanced with time. We, as I said earlier on, respect is earned, and the only way that we can do that is to engage one another constantly, and where there are problems that might emerge, we need to timelessly inform Labour so that we do not find ourselves in a situation where our relationship is regulated through a court judgment.
Do you think it would be wiser for government to no longer decide on long-term wage increments, given what we've seen happen with this particular deal, and given that you can't tell what's going to happen with the economy in the next 3 years?
Well, there are pros and cons to multi-year agreements. There was a very good reason why we agreed on multi-year agreements. but there are a number of factors also that come in between that might not be of our making, that we might not even be able to afford. So, you know, it's a matter of the trust that needs to be built into the relationships and the engagements that we have with labor, so that even if we opt for multi-year agreements, labor should trust us enough that when we come back to them to say implementation in this particular regard is not going to be as easy, then labor would be in a position to respect and understand that what we tell them is the truth. We can no longer afford the implementation of an agreement. But agreements between labor and employers all across our economy, but even in the public sector, are something that we have taken very, very seriously. It was just a matter of affordability because of the state of our economy and other factors. So it was not as if we went onto the negotiating table in bad faith. We went there in good faith, and unfortunately, we could not live up to the expectations of labor as per the agreement that we had signed with them.
Is government considering actually giving any increase in the public sector when it comes to wages this year? Because that's the one thing that we've heard from unions today. The fact that they got a very small increase, what was it, just 1% or something like that last year, means that they're struggling because the rest of life is increasing. The expenses are increasing, petrol, food, etc. Is there any consideration for that to happen this year?
There is always
Yeah. What a question to lose the minister at. Minister, let me try one more second.
looking at this.
There you go. Okay, Minister, I lost you from the time you started speaking, so just pick up for us again.
No, I was saying that we go into wage negotiations and in the collective bargaining sectors, not with the view of reneging on decisions and agreements, but we go there in good faith. We might not come out looking and smelling like roses in this particular instance, but we could look at other issues if there is unaffordability in the system. There are many other low-hanging fruits that we can take into account and implement speedily so that our employees are not found out of pockets. One of the things that we're looking at, which is a very low-hanging fruit, is the implementation of the government employee housing scheme. That if we implement it correctly, it will ensure that our people, as part of our employees, pay less interest on housing loans than they're currently paying. So that will also boost the amount of money that we
so incentives,
for our employees.
incentives
so
basically
that we could look at.
Do you have the money though? Because the budget speech was last week.
Sure.
Do you have the money for an increase?
Well, for instance, the one that I'm talking about now on the government employee housing scheme, there are savings that have accrued for the system and also specifically for employees. So it's a matter of really implementing that in such a way that employees pay far less than they are currently paying in interest rates for their bonds.
I mean, but do you have an increase or money for an increase in salaries? Because at the end of the day, that's what people want, cash in hand.
Well, the situation continues to be dire, but these are conversations that we're going to have when we start wage negotiations.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Public Service and Administration Minister Ayanda Dlodlo.